everyone, and welcome to the show. This is your Frontier Opening Bell. It's Wednesday, the 24th of January. This is how we're rolling on. Big news as Anthony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State, touched down in Côte d'Ivoire on Tuesday, starting a four-nation tour of the continent, met with the AfDB's leadership. Led by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina in Abidjan, went to the Africa Rice Center, got some samples of the rice, was produced through that research institution in Côte d'Ivoire. Then, of course, had some closed-door meeting with the AfDB group. Then he met yesterday evening the Nigerian president in Abuja, the country's political capital, speaking to the security issues and support from American government around the Sahel region and Nigeria's Lake Chad area. And all of that during that period of interaction with Mr. President and a later press briefing. Today, Wednesday, we're expecting Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, to touch down in Lagos. He will be speaking with the CEOs of some of the biggest tech unicorns in Nigeria. Of course, that will be taking place as the American government opens up its new tech center in Lagos, Nigeria's financial and economic capital. And of course, later today, we expect Anthony Blinken to move on to Angola, Africa's second largest oil producer, as part of his tour of the African continent in the new year 2024. But let's go on to the market street. Roughly 3% yesterday on the Nigerian market as Dangote shares, Boa Cement, two of the largest cement maker. Then you've got a few names within the consumer goods space also on the road. Then you got the oil and gas sector. We hold the deal of Dangote Refinery. The oil sector is moving. Seplat shares was up roughly 10% yesterday, well up to 2,000 level. Then you've got Etana Oil, which is also in the oil sector, but of course mainly in the downstream sector, shares also up. The banking sector was soft yesterday, about 2%. Industrial goods, oil and gas, consumer goods took the day. So we're looking at when the oil share index in Lagos will touch 100,000 reading, which would be a record ever. The BRVM trying to claw its way back to 210, just 1 basis point. That's not strong enough. Egyptian stock market bucked the trend. It started on Sunday, down 1.65%. The Nairobi stock market took a dip by 0.5%. South Africa had its very big jump, the first since we started the week, 1.36% to the upside, 73,337. We got a very busy week for South Africa as far as data is concerned. The Reserve Bank interest rate decision, the PPI for December, as well as December inflation data, all that's in play for the current week in South Africa. But if you look at the news, by the way, what's making a splash across the East African corridor, because Kenya's diaspora remittances is growing to a record 671 billion shillings. That's for the last year period, while Uganda and the UAE investment firms are in talks over a planned $4 billion oil refinery. Yesterday, the Minister for Petroleum and Mineral Resources in Uganda, Dr. Ruth gave a press briefing and spoke about the latest deal about the Tilenga oil and gas project and where it is right now. The production is expected to start in the first half of 2025. She spoke about the environmental and the sustainability issues around the oil and gas project, Total Energies, and two Chinese companies that are involved in that particular $4 billion project. All that in the news yesterday from Uganda. And we have all that covered for you also on Frontier Africa Reports. You've got the Ethio Telecom in Ethiopia, posting 14% increase in its half-year 2023 earnings. The numbers is out. It's still a local big boy to beat on the market with Safaricom in on the game in Africa's second most populous economy. Then you got Burundi economy looking to expand 4.3% this year against 2.7% last year, and that's according to the International Monetary Fund. You got Tanzania also in the East Africa's corridor, looking at about 3.3 trillion tourism growth to boost the economy this year. That's all part of what President Tinubu Hassan is working on. Let's move on, see what's making headlines in West Africa. Of course, we'll talk about Anthony Blinken in Nigeria, then of course in Côte d'Ivoire, moving on to Angola. Then you have the AfDB floating that $2 billion, 4.125% 3-year social global benchmark bond, which is the first in the new year, raising the cotton for the TFI for the rest of the year. That bond will be maturing February 25, 2027. They have the Just Point Group in Ghana doing a $1 billion memorandum of understanding with Eki Energy on carbon credit. That's joining the carbon credit market where you have a few African countries already in place. Sonatel, that big telecom listed on the BRVM in Côte d'Ivoire, says it's getting about 23.5 billion West Africa CFA franc funding from Emerging African Infrastructure Group expand its footprints in terms of infrastructure for telecommunication, data, and other businesses within the West African region. Then you got Togo, says it raised about 27 billion CFA franc from the UEMOA market within the first few weeks of January 2024. Let me take that straight to Southern Africa and see what's making the big news. Of course, all eyes on the central bank, the South Africa's Reserve Bank, how to decide this week. But of course, we're expecting inflation data, CPI and the PPI data to see what support these two core economic data will give the central bank monetary policy 5-member committee and how they will decide. The rand, however, recovered from its 3-month low against the US dollar. Pricewaterhouse has some news for South Africa and is looking at its supply chain disruptions far from over for the country, no thanks to Transnet troubles. Then you have Zimbabwe rate setting meeting will be later this month, January 29, as we see the Zimbabwean dollar crash into an all-time low against the US dollar. The capital market experts, however, are seeing more activity and return on investment on the Malawi Stock Exchange. Malawi has one of the fastest moving stock markets in sub-Saharan Africa last year, and the market is continuing in the new year in terms of return on investment in local currency terms. Then the World Bank is looking at a rosier 2024 for Botswana, one of Africa's research-rich economy diamond. Take me to the North African market and see what's making the news this Wednesday. Egyptian Stock Exchange is floating a new market for voluntarily delisted companies. And this is just taking a rabbit out of your heart when you look at companies delisting. Perhaps the South African GSE need to knock on the doors or put a phone call through to the Egyptians. How are you doing it? We've seen about 22 companies delist from the South African GSE market. Now, the Egyptian market authorities are getting a bit smarter here and say, look, we can provide a different platform for you. If you're delisting from the main market, you go there. It's a little bit between not going to hell, but go to limbo, whatever it is there. But again, that's something new. It's called Tameya. That's that new market for you if you're voluntarily delisting from the EGX, not kicked out by the market for market misbehavior. Then you got the EBRD, which is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, injecting about $75 million into Egypt's Gulf of Suez wind farm. That's part of clean energy support by the EBRD. You got Egypt's digital exports up about 25% year on year for the 2023 period. And finally, Tunisia says it settled all its 2023 local and foreign debts and will be repaid about $4 billion in 2024. President Secy is cleaning up the books, as it were, trying to do all he can to be on the good side of the IMF and the World Bank to get some support that the North African economy really, really needs. And those are your headlines. The Frontier opening bell this Wednesday, the 24th of January. We've got a whole lot more on the day. Keep your eyes on, from earnings to economic data. Follow us through on our social media platforms and handles. We like your comments. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. I am Bosin Amafai. Bye for now.